Hi YouTube and welcome to my Super Wonderland tutorial series. This is part 1 of a multi-episode guide where I'll teach you everything you need to know to build a game just like this one. This is Runny Jumpy, a game I released on both EU and NA. And by the end of this series, you'll understand how to build each component and write every node so you can create a complete game yourself. In this video, I'll be focusing on the very basics. What are entities? What are prefabs? How to modify objects so that they can perform actions. Setting up 3 basic mechanics. A coin you can pick up, a chest you can open, and a finishing line you can walk through. We won't be doing any kind of coding in the node graph editor because that will be in part 2. And today is all about understanding and preparing your object. In Miliastra Wonderland, there's 2 types of objects. The first one would be dynamic units and the second are static units. So static units are, well, you can say decorations, well, things that exist purely as scenery, like vegetation, trees, buildings, and pretty much any non-interactive environment asset. Static units cannot be influenced by node graphs and they cannot have any components, and this is to optimize performance so that you can have pretty much as many static units as you would like, or as the limit allows. Whereas dynamic units are anything the player can interact with. For example, chest, coins, and buttons. And dynamic units can use components, and these components add extra functionality to an object. So today we'll be using 3. The first would be the coin. Then we'll use a chest. And the last component we'll be using is a gate, but this will not be a dynamic unit, but a static unit for now. So these are all components we will be using today. So next we'll be looking at the components, which is the third tab when you select an object. And like I said, static units cannot have components, therefore we will start with the chest. And every dynamic unit starts with 3 default components. We have the custom variable, which stores data. For example, the coin can store a score value, or the chest can store a variable that indicates whether the chest has been opened or not. Then each dynamic unit has a VFX playing effect, where you could add visual effects to your object, and we have a unit status. Think of these like buffs. They can apply certain effects, but won't be used for our chest or for a coin today. We'll be using unit status and custom variables later in the series, but today we are just adding components that allow us interactions with our objects. So let's start with the chest now. To open a chest, and to interact with the chest, we need a component that is called tab. And in that tab, we have several options, and I will go to advanced editing to change the values. So now we'll see all the options and how to actually change them. We have the initially effective, which in the context of the tab tells the system whether you can use the tab or if you cannot use the tab. Right now we will keep that activated. Then we have the display icon over here, and for the chest we'll just change it to a more fitting icon. Over here you see a preview on how the tab icon would look like when we were to approach the chest. Next we have local filter and the corresponding filter node graph that is needed for the local filter. We will ignore that for now as we are not needing it. What this can do is we could define a filter that makes it only possible for a certain group to actually interact with the chest. For example, if we have like 2 teams and only the winning team gets to open the chest, that would be an example for why we would need a filter. And finally, we have the trigger option area. And the trigger area is shown as a blue box around the chest. And this blue box defines where the player must stand to interact with the chest so that this tab icon actually pops up. So for now, we should be resizing it so that the player doesn't have to stand right in front of the chest, but has a little bit of room to actually work with. For that, all you have to do is click in this area, and then you can drag and make it a little bit bigger. And pretty much however you like it. And if you want, you can actually pull it a little bit forward if you don't want it to be openable from the back. And that's pretty good already. So next up is the coin. And we want players to walk into the coin and collect it. We need to make 2 modifications. First of all, in the info tab, we will go to native collision and we will have to disable the native collision because this makes the object solid, and if it's enabled, the coin acts like a wall, and disabling it allows the player to actually walk through the coin. And the second thing we need to add is a collision trigger. Right now it says none because we do not have any set up. So we go to advanced editing and press the plus icon. And now we have a collision trigger. And again, we have the initially effective, whether it triggers at all. We have the effective target. This basically says who can trigger it, and for our case we only want characters to trigger it, so neither objects or creations are needed in here. And again, the blue box is representing the pickup range, and once set, the coin is pretty much ready to go. So I don't think we really need to change that over here. This looks pretty fine to me. We can close that over here. Now, to avoid repeating all these steps for every chest and every coin, we will save them as a prefab. For that, you just have to right click the object and then save as prefab. And now they will show over here. And once we save them, we can just drag them into the scene again, and they will carry over all the changes we made. So we do not need to disable the collision again for each coin. We do not have to set up the collision trigger. We don't have to set up the tap event for the chest, and anything else we would have customized here. So now we want to create the finishing gate, but as I said earlier, static objects cannot have components, but we do need a trigger to end the game. And to solve this, we will build the gate from scratch as a prefab in the prefab library. So for that, we can delete this and then go over here, which opens the prefab library. Once inside the prefab library, we'll go to dynamic units, other, and then have an empty model. Press F to focus. And what we are going to do over here is we'll go to the model tab and add the gate model that we just had. And since the empty model over here is a dynamic unit, this gate now is a dynamic object. And since this is a dynamic object, we can actually add a collision trigger. So again, we just want the character to walk through, and now we have to customize the area so that it fits the gate. And once this is done, we'll just save this one as a prefab again. And now the gate is already set up and we are pretty much almost done. So now we can set our gate again, and we have it as a dynamic unit, which still carries our prefab data with the collision trigger. One great feature of prefabs is the ability to override them. So for example, if we take that chest over here, which is the prefab we created, and we'll change the model to another chest, let's say a bigger one, we can now press override and save prefab. And what this will do is it will override every instance of that prefab in the scene to follow now these changes. This is pretty much it for part 1. To summarize, we have set up an interactive chest with a tap component, a collectible coin component with a trigger. We have a finishing gate, and we have prefabs for all 3 of them. And before we wrap up, I have a small challenge for you. Try creating one more empty model prefab, but this time don't add a model, and instead add the orange fireworks VFX to it and then save it as its own prefab. We will be using this firework effect in part 2. Don't worry, if this setup still feels confusing, at the start of the next episode, I'll walk you through on how to create the fireworks VFX prefab step by step, so you won't miss out on anything. And then in the next video, I'll show you how to use node graphs to make these objects actually work, so that we can open the chest, collect the coin, and finish a level as soon as we walk through the gate. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in part 2.